As Azik felt his ship travel towards the north pole of the green and blue ball and the hulking Harchan mothership, its eventual destination, he couldn't shake the feeling that the Harchan were bluffing. True, 6 interceptors was a pretty big hand to bluff with, but he wasn't a high trader for nothing, and keen instincts of the confidence of your opponent was essential in his line of work. If the Harchan were confident, they'd allow him to control his own ship. Furthermore, they wouldn't have kept the interceptors trailing him, with missile locks on. As he pulled on his ceremonial robes, he tapped the communicator in his chamber. "Syl, has the Salvation Pod launched yet?"
No, High Trader. We've just installed the relays so we can beam the scanner data. It'll be able to be launched once all has been transferred.
"Before you do so, use the reserve power to scan the planet. Let's see what we're dealing with." Syl clicked in affirmation, and Azik tasted the air, checking his own scent. Good. Still completely neutral. He didn't know if the Harchan had anything capable of reading scent messages, but it never hurt to make your negotiating face as implacable as possible. As he pulled on the full headset, an idea formed in his head. After all, the communication had been for him and a security escort to be ready, and if Syl was going to take the bridge... Azik arrived in the medical bay, looking at the engineer who was currently being checked out by a medic in full flush.
"Rating Jack, you are a new-hatched softshell. You know that a moving body within a temporal distortion effect is in constant flux, yet you override your transit seat and begin walking around while time hasn't caught up with you. You're lucky your blood only went a dit, half a millisecond, into the past. Otherwise, you'd have been a full-body disjoint. No, High Trader, what can I do for you?"
Azik clicked. "It's not you, medic. I need Rating Jack to accompany me aboard the Harchan mothership." Jack's frill flattened completely, and his tail beat a tattoo on the floor in anxiety.
But, High Trader, surely someone else higher ranked would be...
"Rating Jack, you are the only person I think is qualified. The Harchan asked for myself and a security escort."
But we don't have a security detail on board."
"Precisely. Consider this a promotion, with no pay, and more duties." Azik turned and left, as he left Jack dwelling on what was about to happen. Azik tugged again at the ill-fitting body armor on Jack's upper arm, as it slid once again down to the crook of his first joint. It was the only thing close to a security uniform on the ship, the personal luggage of a rather paranoid chef. It had taken Azik purchasing it at new rack price from the damn greed fly chewer to get it out and onto Jack. However, Azik now had a security detail, and looked rather splendid in his full ceremonial robes. Most often used to overawe and wow more easily impressed species, the gilded robe was woven with semi-precious stones detailing the various trade routes Azik had traveled. His headset was also on his head, hiding his expressive tongue and providing live translation of cultural tics. The glorious Endeavor had docked with an external port of the vast mothership, and an order had come through for him and his escort to move to the main hold door. Still vastly outgunned, Azik had complied. And as the door opened, Azik quickly keyed the Salvation Pod launch order to Syl on the bridge, hoping to mask the pod's launch and the repowering of multiple systems across the Endeavor. The scan itself had shown the world was remarkably unremarkable, as far as habitable worlds went. A few too many high mountain ranges for Azik's liking, but generally a mainly water-based planet with large land masses. What was unusual, and more than a little concerning, was the large amount of background radiation isolated around a few points. The scanners had been unable to get any reading of what was inside those areas, as the extensive radiation had scrambled any return signal, and Syl hadn't dared risk any power to boost the scan, for fear of the very grumpy Harchan had taken it as an attempt to gain a weapon lock of some sort. Azik seriously hoped the Harchan hadn't deployed a radiation wash on the planet, typically only reserved for the worst of the very worst things that could be encountered. Azik and Jack were met outside the door by 3 Harchan shock troopers. The bugs stood the same height as Azek, but nearly twice as wide, their forearm manipulators clutching man-portable coil guns, while their backwards-facing legs shifted uncomfortably in the change in pressure between the mothership and the Endeavor. Harchan could tolerate well below galactic standard in air pressure, but preferred high pressure, highly rich air, as their exoskeleton worked far less effectively than conventional lungs. The front Harchan jerked its head, and all but poked Azek with its gun as it turned, one of its 6 eyes continuing to track Azek. The other 2 fell in behind the smaller Zilpik, casting shadows over the 2. Jek was clearly trying to remember his negotiating lessons, and was affecting a casual attitude, but Azek could see his tension in the small flicks his tail made, seeking something to grab and curl around. Azek, for his part, was perfectly put together, and gazed around the ship as they were marched through. It had only been 600 ril, around 34 years, since the Harchan had agreed to allow non-Harchan polity traders into their non-core systems, previously alleging that rival cultures could undermine their attempts to unify new systems, ignoring the fact that the Zilpik Trade Council were in the process of trying exactly that with several border systems. It seemed a very short-sighted and paranoid view, in Azek's mind. He did notice that the mothership was in a poor state, with several open panels with wiring clearly halfway through repairs, or salvage. He couldn't tell which. The escorts also were in a shabby state, most of their body armor missing parts, showing chitin underneath, and none of them carried spare ammunition. They entered through an iris door into a large circular room, and he felt contragravity systems kick in, lifting them upwards. When the door opened again, Azek was unsurprised to see a utilitarian combat command deck, but was somewhat more surprised to see only a single Harchan in the command throne, no other officers around. This Harchan was out of armor, and Azek could see small bits of vegetation growing in the overlap of the bug's chitin, and dozens of microcracks that normally would have been buffed off to present a more military bearing. The lone Harchan nodded, and Jek and Azek were pushed off the contragrav lift before it descended. The Harchan gestured for them to approach.
Are they going to kill us, High Trader?
Jek whispered to Azek as they moved forward. And don't be ridiculous. Remember, if someone has a knife at your throat, it's only because they want something from you. It's your job to get paid for it. Jek wrapped his tail briefly around Azek's, seeking reassurance, before they arrived at the foot of the command throne. The Harchan straightened up, all 6 of its eyes looking a shade of off-blue instead of virulent yellow. Harchan only looked like that when they were near molting, and for an officer to be on duty when his body would be telling him to sleep, eat, and burrow was shocking.
I'm Garash.
The Harchan's teeth flashed briefly as it spoke, a mouthful of needle points. Azek suppressed a shudder, and tried not to remember that the leading theory as to why the Harchan developed sentience was to stop them consuming their entire homeworld. I'm High Trader Azek. May I ask why you have accosted my vessel? The Harchan's mandibles rubbed against each other, making a soft chirping.
I'm stopping you from making a mistake. A mistake like launching that salvation pod loaded with scan data. Don't worry. We shot it down. It should crash somewhere in the largest mountain range on this accursed planet, so we'll be able to recover it before the humans do.
Humans? The inhabitants of this planet?
Yes, and trust me, you don't want them getting a hold of your salvation pod and its short-range jump capability. I think they'll react poorly to your debt slavery and economic warfare, just as badly as they reacted to our pronouncement of annexation.